The return. The morning light filtered through the tall windows of Westmore University's mathematics building, casting long shadows across the polished floors. Evelyn Callahan clutched her worn leather notebook as she navigated the hallways, feeling conspicuously out of place among the students half her age. At 38, Evelyn stood out in the sea of 20-somethings rushing between classes. Her simple white blouse and gray cardigan contrasted sharply with the casual hoodies and trendy outfits surrounding her. She'd spent 20 years dreaming of this moment, returning to finish what she'd started before life took an unexpected turn. "Excuse me," she said quietly, stepping aside as a group of laughing students hurried past. None of them noticed her, the invisible middle-aged woman trying to blend in. Room 307. Advanced Calculus with Dr. Howard Garner. Evelyn took a deep breath before entering. The lecture hall was imposing, with tiered seating facing a massive chalkboard already covered with complex equations. She chose a seat near the back, arranging her notebooks methodically. "First day?" the young woman beside her asked with a kind smile. "First day back," Evelyn corrected with a small smile. "It's been a while." Before they could continue, the room fell silent as Dr. Garner entered. His reputation preceded him, brilliant, demanding, and notoriously difficult to impress. His silver hair and tailored suit projected authority, his piercing gaze sweeping the room as though assessing who would survive his course. "Welcome to Advanced Calculus," his voice filled the room without effort. "Look to your left, look to your right. One of those people won't be here by midterms." A nervous chuckle rippled through the class. Evelyn remained still, eyes forward. "This isn't remedial math," Dr. Garner continued, writing an equation on the board with practice strokes. "This is where we separate those who merely like mathematics from those who understand it." His eyes landed on Evelyn, lingering just long enough to make her uncomfortable. She recognized that look, the one questioning her presence, wondering if she'd wandered into the wrong room. The challenge. As Dr. Garner launched into his lecture, Evelyn's hand moved across her notebook, transcribing his words but also adding notes in the margins, corrections, alternative approaches, connections to theoretical concepts he hadn't mentioned. MS. Dr. Garner suddenly paused, looking directly at Evelyn. "Callahan." "Evelyn Callahan," she replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. "Ms. Callahan, you disagree with my approach?" He'd noticed her writing independently of his lecture. "No sir, just taking notes." His lips tightened, eyes narrowing slightly. "I see. Well, Miss Callahan, perhaps you'd like to share your notes with the class tomorrow." The dismissal in his tone was unmistakable. Evelyn nodded once, knowing the challenge had just begun. By the end of the first week, Evelyn had established a routine. She arrived early, reviewed her notes from the previous session, and prepared for Dr. Garner's increasingly pointed questions. "You worked in insurance, was it?" he asked one morning, glancing at her registration information. "Accounting," Evelyn corrected quietly. "For a manufacturing company." Quite a leap to advanced theoretical mathematics. His tone suggested the leap was too great. The whispers had started too, students wondering why she was there, what had brought her back to school at her age. Evelyn ignored them, focusing instead on the elegant dance of numbers and theories she'd loved since childhood. In the faculty lounge, Dr. Harriet Powell overheard conversations about the older woman in Garner's class. "Howard seems determined to drive her out," remarked Professor Jenkins, stirring his coffee. Harriet frowned. "That's hardly fair. Has he even given her a chance?" "You know Howard," Jenkins shrugged. "He's decided who belongs in his classroom before the semester even starts." The ally. Later that day, Harriet observed Evelyn sitting alone in the mathematics library, surrounded by advanced texts well beyond the course requirements. Curious, she approached. "Heavy reading for week 1, she commented, noting titles on non-Euclidean geometry and complex analysis. Evelyn looked up, slightly startled. "Oh, just refreshing my memory. It's been a while since." She trailed off. I'm Dr. Powell. Differential equations. Harriet extended her hand. Evelyn Callahan. They shook hands. You're in Howard's class. How's that going? Evelyn's polite smile revealed nothing. It's challenging, as it should be. Harriet studied her for a moment. You know, we have a faculty colloquium next week. Graduate students sometimes attend. You might find it interesting. Thank you, but I'm not sure Dr. Garner would. I'm inviting you, Harriet smiled. Tuesday, 4 p.m., Math Hall. Back in class, Dr. Garner seemed determined to find Evelyn's breaking point. His questions to her were more complex, his responses to her answers curt and dismissive. Miss Callahan, perhaps you could explain to the class where you're struggling with this concept. It might help the others who are too shy to admit their confusion. Evelyn looked up from her notes, meeting his gaze directly. I understand the concept, Dr. Garner. I was just considering an alternative approach to the proof. His eyebrows rose slightly. An alternative approach? How novel. The sarcasm wasn't lost on anyone. I'd be fascinated to hear it. Tomorrow, perhaps. The challenge hung in the air between them. Evelyn nodded once, knowing this was the moment he'd been waiting for, the opportunity to publicly establish her inadequacy. I'll be prepared, she said quietly. Tuesday afternoon found Evelyn in the back row of Math Hall, listening as faculty members presented their current research. Dr. Powell had noticed her enter and offered a small nod of acknowledgement. Most of the other attendees were graduate students, huddled together in small groups, occasionally glancing curiously at the unfamiliar face. Dr. Garner was the final presenter, discussing his work on applications of multidimensional calculus. The moment of truth. Evelyn listened intently to Dr. Garner's presentation, her notebook open, occasionally jotting down observations. She noticed a small inconsistency in his approach, nothing that invalidated his conclusions, but an inefficiency in his methodology that could be refined. As the presentations concluded and attendees mingled over coffee, Evelyn debated leaving quietly. Dr. Powell intercepted her. What did you think? She asked, gesturing toward where Dr. Garner was holding court with several admiring graduate students. It was fascinating, Evelyn replied diplomatically. But Harriet's eyes were perceptive. But? Evelyn hesitated. His approach to the integration sequence was traditional. You see another way? Before Evelyn could respond, Dr. Garner himself approached, his expression cooling as he recognized Evelyn. Ms. Callahan. This is unexpected. Undergraduate students rarely attend these sessions. I invited her, Dr. Powell interjected smoothly. Evelyn was just sharing some thoughts on your integration sequence. Dr. Garner's smile tightened. Was she indeed? And what revolutionary insights has Miss Callahan gleaned from her extensive experience in accounting, wasn't it? The condescension hung heavily in the air. Several nearby conversations quieted as people turned to watch. The next morning, the classroom was electric with anticipation. Word had spread about yesterday's promised demonstration. Dr. Garner entered with his usual commanding presence, but there was something different in his demeanor, a predatory satisfaction. Miss Callahan, he said without preamble, I believe you had an alternative approach to share with us. Evelyn rose slowly, gathering her notebook. Every eye in the room followed her as she walked to the front. The massive chalkboard loomed before her, covered with Dr. Garner's original equation, a complex calculus problem involving multiple variables and integration techniques. Take your time, Dr. Garner said with false generosity, stepping back with his arms crossed. Show us this alternative approach. Evelyn picked up the chalk, her hand trembling slightly. Then something shifted in her posture. 20 years of suppressed mathematical passion, of dreams deferred, of being underestimated, it all crystallized into focused determination. The silence. Evelyn began to write. Not the traditional step-by-step approach Dr. Garner expected, but something entirely different. Her chalk moved with confidence across the board, creating elegant mathematical notation that flowed like poetry. She started with a transformation that no one saw coming, converting the complex multivariable equation into a simpler form using advanced techniques from differential geometry. The room watched in stunned silence as she applied theorems most of them had never encountered. "You see," Evelyn said quietly, her voice growing stronger with each word, "if we approach this through topological transformation rather than brute force integration, we can reduce the computational complexity by several orders of magnitude." Her hand moved faster now, filling the board with equations that danced between pure mathematics and applied theory. She referenced concepts from her childhood studies, theorems she'd explored during lonely nights after her children were asleep, mathematical relationships she'd discovered while balancing corporate spreadsheets. Dr. Garner's expression shifted from smugness to confusion to something approaching awe. The students leaned forward in their seats, recognizing they were witnessing something extraordinary. "The traditional approach," Evelyn continued, glancing briefly at Dr. Garner's original work, "requires 17 steps and assumes continuous differentiability across all domains. But if we utilize the Gauss-Bonnet theorem in conjunction with Stokes' theorem." She wrote the final line with a flourish, a solution so elegant, so impossibly clean, that it seemed to mock the complexity of the original problem. The classroom was absolutely silent. Dr. Garner stared at the board, his mouth slightly open. He walked closer, studying each line of Evelyn's work, searching for an error that didn't exist. "This is..." he began, then stopped. "Where did you learn this approach?" Evelyn set down the chalk and turned to face the class. "I've been working on problems like this since I was 12 years old. I never stopped loving mathematics, Dr. Garner. I just had to pause my formal education to raise my children and support my family." She looked directly at him now, all pretense of meekness gone. "You assumed that because I worked in accounting, I couldn't possibly understand advanced mathematics. But numbers have been my language my entire life, whether balancing corporate budgets or exploring theoretical proofs in my spare time." The silence stretched on. Several students began to applaud, tentatively at first, then with growing enthusiasm. Dr. Powell, who had quietly entered the back of the room, was clapping too, her face beaming with satisfaction. Dr. Garner remained speechless, still staring at the board. Finally, he cleared his throat. "Class dismissed," he said quietly. As students filed out, buzzing with excitement about what they'd witnessed, Dr. Garner approached Evelyn. "Miss Callahan." "Evelyn," he said, his voice different now, respectful, almost humble. "I owe you an apology. I made assumptions that were both unfair and incorrect." Evelyn gathered her notebooks calmly. "We all make assumptions, Dr. Garner. The difference is whether we're willing to learn when we're proven wrong." As she walked toward the door, Dr. Garner called after her. Would you consider presenting your approach at next month's Faculty Research Symposium?" Evelyn paused at the doorway and smiled, not the polite, careful smile she'd worn for weeks, but a genuine expression of quiet triumph. "I'll consider it," she said. 6 months later, Evelyn Callahan graduated summa cum laude with her degree in mathematics. She went on to complete a PhD in applied mathematics and became a professor herself, one who never judged her students by their age, background, or appearance. Dr. Garner kept her solution on his chalkboard for the rest of the semester, a daily reminder that brilliance comes in many forms, and wisdom often wears the most unexpected faces. The end.